welcome to Passionate and Practical, the art of dreaming, doing, and serving. We want to encourage you to live out your passions and your dreams and give you practical advice on how to do that. So we are here with my dear friend Kaysie, and she's going to be talking about resurrecting beauty in broken homes. She is the founder and executive director of Homes and Havens, an incredible ministry that helps take stories of women that are coming out of some kind of crisis and helps them to build a home that they're proud of. So thank you so much, Kaysie, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So first question is, why are you so passionate about design?
Why am I so passionate about design? I think it's almost like an unconscious thing. It wasn't like something I chose. It was, I think, from the moment that I was able to like comprehend creating a space or moving furniture around or whatever. It was like I was that little girl that was constantly moving chairs and making my bed and, just doing different things like that, and have enjoyed it. It's kind of like you lose yourself in it a little bit. And from a child, I've been that way. So it didn't feel like something I chose necessarily. It was like, oh, that looks fun. It was just something that happened to me, it felt like.
That's interesting. So it's cool to see how sometimes from a very young age, the way that we act and our different personality types are coming out, even from, and you have a 2.5-year-old, so even from a very young age, kind of the trajectory of their life is kind of in their little actions and things that their little quirks and things that they're passionate about, even from a young age. So that's really neat. So tell us a little bit about, also I know about your story that your mom is really great with design. So does that play?
Gifted, yes.
Yeah.
She invited us as kids into that process. We moved a lot for my dad's job and various reasons and different things. And so every home, it was like a brand new canvas. And she would, nothing ever stayed the same. It was always, let's tear down that wall and add, this or that. And so I can remember being a kid and sitting in tile shops and picking out grout and, all that kind of stuff. And it was fun to get to see her do that. But then hearing when people came to our home, they were always like, Cindy, you're so gifted, or this home is so beautiful. And I think as a child, I felt proud that they felt that. And even though I didn't know if it was beautiful or not, it was just kind of like, I liked it, and she created it.
Yeah.
And so, and my dad was very good about just letting her do her thing. And she had no background in that. She was just gifted. And so it was just fun to be a kid and watch her do that.
So tell us a little bit more about Homes and Havens. When did the ministry start? And tell us a little bit about your take on what you all do.
Yeah, so our mission is we create healing spaces for women in recovery. And on a practical level, what that looks like is we furnish and decorate homes for women who have coming out of trauma or that are in recovery or have had some kind of crisis or brokenness in their story. And they are working with other organizations in Chattanooga already. And so they are referred to us after they're kind of like on their way and making those steps of they're taking their recovery seriously. They've got a place to live now, and they've either got a job or have a path that they're going to take to continue to stay out of that previous lifestyle. And so we come in and have a consultation with the client and walk through her space, kind of develop a wish list of like, what's her personality, what are her needs, and then in a couple of weeks we have everything gathered, and then we schedule a day and come and set it all up for her, and then she gets to come home and have like a little mini reveal. And so it's fun that way. But it didn't start out that organized. It didn't start out like this is what Homes and Havens is going to do. It really was an accident that I have a past of, I feel like everybody in some way has been touched by addiction or abuse or brokenness in some sense, whether it's an immediate family member, whether it's yourself, whether it's a coworker or something like that. We're all touched by it, and I have yet to meet someone that doesn't know of someone else that has experienced or been touched by this. And so my story is no different. My family went through a very difficult season involving addiction and abuse and brokenness from generations past, just kind of like doubling up on ours, I felt like. And so part of that healing process for me personally was creating a space in my home where I could heal. And then what that translated to missionally was, how can I help other women do the same thing? And for me, it was one thing, I have multiple friends who are like, you should decorate for people for a living. You're so gifted. You could create a business. You could, do all of this and make money, doing something that you loved. But I think it was missing that proponent of like, how is this impacting the kingdom? And how is this impacting our community in a way that would actually help people heal or help people recover? And so because of my personal dealings with recovery and brokenness and addiction and all of those kind of things, I worked with a lot of ministries here in my city that were already doing that. And so I really wanted to join somewhere where there was success, where there was victory. And because it was in a season that felt so full of defeat in so many areas, and I was like, I've got to get around some victory. And so working with a local ministry that were walking with women coming out of addiction and different things, and teaching there every week, and just falling in love with these girls and being so for them, and seeing chains fall off and that breaking happen, and that beauty resurrecting. And I just noticed this gap as their recovery progressed. And so they graduate from their, whether that's a residential or an outpatient program, they graduate. Usually that organization helps them find housing, helps them find a job. But then when it comes to, here's your apartment key, and they enter in, there's most of them are so poor, there's no way they could furnish a home by themselves. I mean, and then that opens up the potential to go to like a rent-a-center or something like that just to get basics. And then that, again, triggers a cycle of debt and crisis and trauma. It just goes on. And too many of them have never had that picture of a safe and healing home that their mom created for them, or someone they loved created for them. And so they literally have no idea how to make a home. And so once I saw that, there's so much brokenness in our community. There's so many needs that it's overwhelming to be like, what do I do about any of this? What do I do about homelessness? What do I do about sex trafficking? What do I do about abuse victims? And I think I saw that gap of like, they need a home. They need someone to help them make a home. I can do that. I can do that one little thing. I can't, I almost went to school to be a counselor, and just multiple obstacles got in the way of that. And so I couldn't be in that, like, my first pick of, like, I'm down in the trenches, we're crisis mode 24/7. I got married and started a family, and it wouldn't work with our lifestyle for this season. And so, but it was something that I could do to play a role in fixing what was wrong in our city. And so I just started doing one girl's home at a time. Like, the director would say, hey, so such and such has got an apartment now. Do you want to walk with her and kind of go through? And that's really kind of how it started. And I loved that it was just small. Like, I really wasn't looking for anything big. Small felt refreshing because I've worked for a lot of nonprofits in the past. And there are politics involved, and there's procedures, and there's you have to make sure you're putting in the right amount of, and getting the right outputs and all that kind of stuff. And I was just so exhausted with all of that. I was like, God, I just want to be in my carport, painting one dresser at a time, and helping one girl at a time, create a home. And
that's when we met.
It was in that crazy hot mess season of just like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, so Kaysie and I were at a dinner together. It was called Dreamers Dinner. A few of our friends got together and put together this gorgeous meal outside on the lake. We had a meal together, and we all got to go around the table and just share what we were deeply passionate about. And so each woman was sharing her story and what she was passionate about, and I was like, oh, cool, exciting, yeah, I like that. And then Kaysie spoke, and I locked eyes with her, and I think she was probably fearful of me at this time, because I was like, whatever you're doing in life, I want a part of it. So we all get up from the table, and I beeline for Kaysie. And I just look at her, and I said,
you said, I want to be your friend.
I said, we were talking about dream defenders, and how as women we need defenders of our dreams. And so I said, I want to be your dream defender. And so she's like, okay. And I told her about this organization in town called Causeway, or asked her about it. And I'm like, I want to sponsor you through Causeway and do this program. And we became friends. And then a couple months later, she was forming a nonprofit. And then humbly just asked me to be I was humbled by the fact that she asked me to be a part of her board of directors. And it's now been a little bit over a year since our initial board retreat, and we're probably on track for another one. So it has just been such an incredible journey, just being with Kaysie and being on this fast moving train that seems like, without Kaysie's, I think a lot of things build because the person building it is driven and motivated, and you are all of those things, but because you wanted to keep it small and you're not the spotlight person, you're like, keep me out of the spotlight. I don't want to be on stages. I don't want to make this thing bigger than it has to be. But clearly God had different plans, because any person that I know that has heard this story has just been so blown away. And like you said, almost everyone has some sort of story in their family history of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, these things that run really deep and are really painful and hurtful. But just hearing your take on it and how we do not have to, that can be a part of us, but we do not have to stay there. We don't have to stay in the pain and the brokenness. There's a beautiful story when we are willing to give it to God and let Him shape what the trajectory of the rest of our life is like. So I absolutely love this ministry. My husband and I are just big advocates for it. It's one of our favorite things to be a part of. And I just feel so humbled by the opportunity that we get to serve with you. And so kind of diving more into the ministry. So what is the recovery process like for these women? They're now on a good path. They've got a job. They've got a home. So maybe describe what their home looked like before recovery and what it looks like now, and then after Homes and Havens gets a hold of the project.
Yeah, it varies. There's different levels of brokenness in the homes that we go to. Sometimes it's full of clutter, depending on how that person responded in that addiction or that abuse cycle. It's just disheveled, it's dark, it's heavy, there's no order, there's no semblance of beauty at all, and it's just usually very dark. I mean, the furniture's dark, there's no lights on, it's just you walk into it's like a cave feeling. Or the other end of that spectrum is are running from or escaping from an abusive situation, and so they're starting over brand new, and it's just empty. It's just barren. And so you come in and there's like a pallet on the floor where they've been sleeping on blankets. There's no mattresses, there's no beds, there's no anything, and they can't afford to do anything else about it except pick up furniture on the side of the road, and it's all mismatched. And, some of the women we've worked with in the past, including they're coming out of prostitution or sex trafficking, coming into an empty apartment is almost a trigger in itself because of being with a pimp or being with someone who is sexually abusing them, because furnishing an apartment was the last thing on their mind. It was just kind of like their clothes are in garbage bags. There's an end table, that's all. They're sleeping on the floor. It's just, that's kind of what it looks like. And so even knowing that, when you come in and you put a space together for a woman, it's like breaking that, what home means to someone, of it doesn't mean that this is a place that should remind you of your past. This shouldn't remind you of the darkest chapter of your story. Right. This should be a place that is launching you forward. And so when we finish with the place, I mean, there's rugs, there's furniture, there's lamps, there's curtains, there's greenery, there's, everything is as it should be. Everything is as what we are starting to call it the sister standard of, if I would do the same exact thing for these women as if I would do for my sister if she was moving out into an apartment or whatever. And so, because she is a sister. And I think that's how we break what's wrong in our city is because we treat people like they aren't related to us and they don't impact us. And so that will only change when one party decides to say, I claim you. Like, you are special to me. You are valuable to me. Like, and I'm going to prove it to you and do something about it and give you the same resources I would as someone that I deeply cherish and love. And so it's powerful, not only in that moment of a reveal when they come in for the first time and they see it. I mean, obviously it's there's varying levels of reaction, but they get to wake up every day, open their eyes and look, and it's a fully furnished bedroom. There's a fully furnished living room. There's a kitchen table. There's beds for their kids. And that every day is chipping away at all the brokenness that has been in their story of you aren't worth anything, or you don't deserve anything more than this, or no one sees you, no one cares about you, you're not valuable. And it is, instead of us, I mean, as much as I would love to park every day, sit across from a table from them and say, you are worth something, you are valuable, I can't. Right. But I can leave them a home that does. And so I think when they wake up, it continues to remind them that that part of me is done, you know, and the new person who I am with dreams and goals and a future and that I'm valuable to my community is going to live on. So they live out of that place instead of where they did. And I think that was the unexpected blessing of it. I was just wanting to provide something tangible, something practical, but it had so many implications in the soul and in the dignity of these women. And I think it was just a pleasant surprise of like, wow, this is doing more. I thought it would, but it was kind of like, this is proving it now, right, you know, because home has always been that place for me too, that it's like, it reminds me of who I am. It reminds me of what I fought for or what I've earned, you know, those kind of things. And so it's just been really surprising, honestly, but great, you know, like to see them. So that
kind of moves into this thought of trauma-informed design. So when I am telling people about Homes and Havens, I always talk about that and how you've done research on colors and paint colors and shapes and things like that and pictures and the importance of putting certain things in place to actually help with the healing process.
Yeah.
And one of the I think the genesis of that is that people kept coming into your own home and saying, wow, I feel so at peace here. Yeah. I feel so at home here. I feel so comfortable here. And so you created a space and you prayed over your space and you were intentional about design. So tell us a little bit more about trauma-informed design and the role that it plays in your selection of these pieces that you're putting in the homes.
Right. I mean, like you said, it did start in my own home. I think I started viewing home design differently after recovering myself from trauma that had happened in my life. And so it felt like the world was burning down around me and in some points. And it was like, I just want a place where I can mend from all of this. And we weren't really in a place financially to like just kind of like go on Pinterest, click, 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 this is what I want. But it really had to be a careful selection of things that I knew would reflect what I wanted this place to be. And so, like you said, I created a mission statement for my home of just like, this is what I want home to be like for me and for anybody else that walks through that front door. And so that mission is what the filter that I used in the home design. And so that was my personal story. So when it came time to create a home for these women, you know, they're not at a place really to think, let's write down a mission statement for your home. Some of them are, and we want to move in that direction of like involving them in that process of like, what is the mission of your home? But a lot of times they don't know what that is. And so during the consultation with them, I'm asking those questions of like building a mission around, but I know one thing, they need to heal. They need a place that they can heal. And
so what are some of those colors and things like that?
So practically, when I created my own home and people were so responsive of like what I had chosen to furnish in my own home, I kind of went on this journey of like, what if there's more? What if there's things in design? What if there are color palettes and textures and arrangements that would actually impact someone's emotional well-being? And so I think I just Googled that. I was like, does does color or does design affect well-being? And then I started researching it through the lens of someone coming in recovering from an addiction, because it's very well known that, I mean, you come out of an addiction and your body is literally rebuilding itself and it's recovering, but there's also triggers that will set you back. And so it was keeping that in mind of like, what would trigger someone who their senses are so sensitive and they're on edge and they're just really battling demons in their body, that their body wants what that old life was. And so you're like mentally trying to charge forward. And so I just started like assembling this huge document that I have on my computer of like any research that I could find on color. And so most of the color palettes we use are very therapeutic, very calming, muted, hushed colors. So greens, blues, whites, grays.
How did we do?
Yeah, you did amazing. Ooh, I love it. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
very subtle.
Thank you.
Also, you looked very trauma-informed today.
Thank you.
So it was... and honestly, when I was doing all this research, I kept looking at my own home and I was like, oh, this makes sense. Like, it's bringing the outside in. So you don't feel like you're in a cave. You feel like you're outside. And when you're outside, there's space. You can breathe. There's freedom. You're not in bondage. Like, there's... Also, God designed that color palette, and He's pretty good at what He does. And so we're really just taking a nod of, a tip from Him and bringing in these color palettes into their home that are just so peaceful.
So on the flip side, what are some colors to stay away from? I'm guessing like black and brown are probably some dark colors that...
Right.
Obviously, wood is a natural color because of trees, but what are some?
Yeah, so colors we tend to stay away from are reds, oranges, not because they're bad colors, but because they're more intense and harsh. And so, I mean, I don't have colors that I don't like. I mean, all colors are great, but it's just, you look at like red out in the world. God chooses like one flower or just like these concentrated little patches of like this red flower or this orange flower, and it's like, oh wow, that's so pretty, but He didn't paint the sky isn't red. I mean, and even in a sunset, the colors are so muted and it's just so peaceful. And so we don't put a lot of those colors in. We do ask the clients what their preferences are. And so, we have some clients that love, like, they're like, oh man, I've always wanted a leather couch or something like that. And that's a very dark, heavy piece of furniture. But we've gotten a leather couch and we just brighten it with other things. We make it not feel so heavy, or it's, different cultures, they are drawn more to those warm, harsh colors. And so we just try to play on it in a way that's still peaceful, still like, we didn't paint their walls burgundy kind of thing, but giving them a nod to their personality and their preferences and stuff. So those are kind of the color palettes we stay away from and just try to make it seem as peaceful and natural as possible. But.
So if you had maybe 3 pieces of advice to someone who was like, oh, they just listen to this and they go home and they're like, wow, I've actually been attracting some darker colors and it's actually affecting the way that I'm looking at myself and others in my mood. What would be some pieces of advice if they wanted to make change? What they could do to kind of make change? Maybe they've got $50 and they're going to the store. What are some go-to things that you would say to lighten up a space?
Paint.
Yeah,
paint is magic. It's just, I mean, whether that's painting your walls or painting your furniture, I mean, that's honestly how I started. We had like the cheap Target furniture too that you're not supposed to paint. I painted it white. I mean, so we painted almost everything white. And that really, at first, it was kind of like, wow, I was afraid it was going to look really sterile, and it just didn't. It just it just soaked up all the light, and it was like keeping it in the room. And that's what I wanted. And so I painted most of our furniture white, adding appropriate pieces of wood to add warmth, So those are things you could do. I mean, paint's relatively cheap and a good weekend project. You can put that together. Painting the walls are really a good way to bring in natural light, whether that's a light gray or a light beige or light just white. My walls are white in my living room and dining room. But so that would be one thing I would recommend. I recommend doing something that a lot of designers call quieting the space. When you know you want to make a change in a room, but you don't know where to begin, take everything out of the room.
Interesting.
Like, leave the heavy stuff, leave the couch, or leave the
Right.
bookcase or whatever. Don't break your back like I would. But, and just quiet it down. Take every lamp, every curtain, just quiet it. And then one by one, add back those items that you're like, all right, I really love this, or this is the color that I like, or whatever. And leave all the other stuff out. Like, sometimes I recommend living a day or two in the empty space first, and then bring it back in slowly. And so you really end up with a room that feels less cluttered, less overwhelming, and you get to choose the things that you love and only put those things back. So
that is a great piece of advice. And so paint and kind of emptying the space or quieting the space. And then what's one more practical thing that they could do?
I think choosing the color palette is important. You know, whether you get on Pinterest can be overwhelming when you're trying to, because you're just like, oh, I love that, but my house doesn't look like that, you know. But it's a good place to find like color palettes, and most of us as women have boards already for home, and it's like going through your Pinterest and saying, what is the common denominator in all these pictures? Like, is it like a bohemian flair? Is it, you know, farmhouse chic, or, you know, something like that, and then really nail down what you want your space to look like, and then piece by piece just start adding that style in. And I know it's expensive. It can be very expensive to fully change a room that, you know, your husband's like, I mean, do you need that? I mean, the old lamp was, and you're like, no, it's killing my soul. But, you know, it's worth it. I view design as like an endurance race instead of like, I'm tired, I'm going to change the whole thing this weekend.
Right.
We just didn't have the budget for that.
Right.
So it took a year and a half to get my living room the way I wanted it. A year and a half. That's a long time of just like picking one thing after the other. So don't view it as like, I'm tired of everything, I need to change it, and I need $500 to make this happen. It's like, over the course of a year, that's not that much, a month.
Right.
So just be committed to it in the long run.
That's great. So we've got only a few minutes. We are going to do kind of more of getting through the last few of these things. So first off, why do you think that beauty and design are important to God's heart?
That's a really good question. I think about that a lot because I've had some pretty harsh criticism in this journey of like, even personally, of like designing my own home. People are like, that's such a waste.
Frivolous.
Yeah, it's frivolous.
Right.
Like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have money to spend
Right.
stuff on that? And to me, it was really going back to the heart of God and saying, God, does this matter? You know, is this being frivolous? Is this being greedy? Is this being wasteful, you know, with the money that you've given me? And I think if you look at the God of Scripture, I mean, the first place we meet God, He's creating. I mean, He's speaking color and light and darkness and all of these textures, and that's who He is. That's the first interaction we have of Him, is like He's Creator God. And then when He, you know, the fall of man and all that kind of stuff, and the only thing God wants is to make His home back with man again. He wants to reunite. And so in the Old Testament, that looked like the tabernacle and that looked like the temple. And if anybody's tried to read through Leviticus and you're kind of like, oh, I can't even deal with it because it's so detailed of like, I want blue tassels with curtains that are this thick and put the base over here and the water over here, you know, and it was just, and that's probably what my friends view me as, just like, oh my gosh, here she goes again. Just like, you know, just a little, or if we change this texture or whatever, and it mattered to Him. Beauty did. He didn't create the world in a concrete box, though He could have. I mean, He had full liberty to do that. He created this beautiful, intricate, ever-changing world for us with all these colors and textures, and I think beauty is so important to the heart of God. I mean, He created a garden, you know, and I think that was important to Him, and I think it comes from Him, and so yeah, it matters. And I don't think it's a waste because
Absolutely.
the world would be a waste. Why did He create trees? Why did He create flowers? Why did He create a hummingbird? Like, why? Because I think beauty matters.
Right.
And yeah.
I'd have to agree. I was having a conversation earlier about Christians and how important it is for us to do things with excellence. And so many either nonprofits or churches or even Christians, they kind of take the humble route of, I don't deserve this or whatever. So how do you speak to that kind of heart and encourage someone that this actually is a spend or an investment into not only your home, but if you're if you're a Romans 12 family that brings people in your home, how does that impact your guests, and how does serving with excellence and serving tasty food and it's not the Pinterest of going above and beyond and being type A about it and striving for perfection, but this thought of excellence. What does that look like?
I could talk about 7 hours about that, but I think,
well, we've got about 2 minutes.
Well, I think there's a typical response in Christian cultures that to follow Jesus, you have to sell everything and be poor. And I can't park there and talk about the theological implications of that, but and how that misses the heart of God. But I think it gets back to our hearts, and I think that the actions don't matter as much as where it's coming from within us. And I think as a woman that is trying to be hospitable and create a home that is hospitable, if you look at design or you look at your home and you think, how can I impress people when they come over? That's going to be a dangerous path to go down, because then it's all about the praise, the affirmation, they didn't notice this, or, that kind of thing. Or instead of, is my home a place that is supposed to bless people? That subtle shift in our hearts as far as like, how can I empower? How can I encourage? How can I uplift? How can I comfort everybody that comes in? And if that influences your design, and you make places where, in your home where people can sit for hours and talk, or a meal that's so good no one wants to leave the table and they just keep talking and they keep eating, and that's the goal. I feel like it's not about impressing, it's about blessing, and I think that shift is what changes it.
That's incredible. So we're going to have to close here. We could obviously talk and talk and talk, because I love everything that comes out of your mouth. And I love just being in your presence. But so we are actually going to do another episode with Kaysie about creating a mission statement for your home. So if this conversation has been right up your alley, then stay tuned and kind of follow us with the next episode that we've got. So as always, you are infinitely valuable. You were here, you were put on this planet to do something, a work that only you can do. You have a set of gifts, talents, and skills that you have and only you have, and it's to glorify God. So thank you so much for joining us, and go and be his hands and feet to this broken world, and have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch. If this message has encouraged you, then please click to subscribe and share with a friend who may be inspired by the message. Also, if you have an event coming up and you're looking for a speaker, click the link below to get in touch with me.